Hello everybody. It's episode 9 of Grizzlies World Wide podcast. And on this episode, we have with us a special guest. And well, all my guests are special, of course. But this one is special in the way that's particular because, first of all, he's not a Grizz fan. And we're going to talk about basketball, but on a astrological with an astrological approach with synergy and everything. So on this episode I have with me the Zodiac GM. Zodiac, how are you?
Hey, how's it going? Thank you for having me here.
No, it's a pleasure to have you. And I just saw like a couple of minutes ago before you came on air, you did like a year with a blue mark.
Yes, it's been one
Yeah.
year now since I've been contemplating and putting out this information, as you say, um, for maybe about 3 years, but I was
Mm-hmm.
hesitant because honestly, I really wanted to bring it up to franchises, NBA franchises. I actually, I did research and sent emails to a couple of general managers for the NBA. Which of course I didn't get any email, any responses back, which was
Yeah, okay.
expected. But I knew there was something there for years. I've done a lot of research, extensive research. I've
Mm-hmm.
done a lot of back testing. I have a database full of teams and their synergy dynamics and all that. And I've been studying it for NBA particular for the last 7 years. But in general, I'm very familiar with the zodiac and astrology, roughly 25 plus years. I mean, it's just an interest and a passion. Like everyone else, are interested in their own signs and whether it's relationships or anything like that. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so this idea it just kind of brewed into you with time.
Yes. I think 2017 and 18. Well, I'm a Houston Rockets fan. That's sort of when the curiosity grew into sports.
Mm-hmm.
When Chris Paul arrived to the Houston Rockets, many was saying that it wasn't going to work with he and James Harden, right? But then,
Mm-hmm.
I sort of knew what Chris Paul's sign was, and it was sort of like the baseline. Okay, he was a Taurus, James Harden was a Virgo, and in my mind, I said, I think it should work. It was just one of those curiosity things, and sure enough, it sort of played that way. That they ended up winning first place in the whole Western Conference, and then from that point, I started gathering information of all the players' signs, and then I was trying to find a correlation.
Mm-hmm.
It literally took me about, I would say, 3 years to find a solid foundation. Lots of trials, lots of different theories I've kind of implemented. So it was very detailed, and it got to the point where I have a good buddy of mine. We watch basketball all the time. It got to the
Mm-hmm.
point where we would see a lineup on the court and sort
Mm-hmm.
of generalize, hey, that lineup is going to work, and sure enough, it ends up working well. But
Yeah.
it took like 3 years of sort of testing to kind of find that correlation.
Yeah. Um, for like okay, so for people that are listening to us and that are not familiar, what is astrological synergy?
Well, the best way to put it, so
Mm-hmm.
I try to find a common ground that connects astrology through zodiac energies, like the astrological signs. There's 12 of them, right? So I try to
Mm-hmm.
connect how they form into a team sense, like sort of like chemistry, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
like to call it synergy because the better synergy that you have is sort of like the fluidity of a team, so
Yeah.
it's like usually I guess before this whole synergy thing, people would just observe a basketball team through their eyes, like a visual observation, like, hey, Denver Nuggets have good chemistry, right? They would
Mm-hmm.
just say it because they see it through their eyes. But behind the scenes, if you look at, it's like unlocking a new level of analytics, and that is astrology. So when you break it down and look at an astrological sense, you see, hey, Denver Nuggets have a very compatible team. So you
Yeah.
start connecting pieces. And
Mm-hmm.
then so that's sort of what synergy is. And when there's like an offset of energies within the team, they tend to, I mean, of course, there's other factors involved. There's talent, experience, everything.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to kind of have an off balance in chemistry as well. So that's sort of where the whole zodiac synergy comes into play, where it's not 100%, but it's sort of like an added on ingredient to your overall analysis. You still have to do your due diligence with everything else, but adding the synergy part is just more like implementing an additional analysis, which is, in my opinion, a big advantage.
And how do you think that professional sports team, not only on NBA but in general, but
Uh huh.
specifically here we're talking about NBA, they're paying more attention to this because I read like I don't know maybe 6 7 years ago about football because football is soccer is a great the biggest sport here in Portugal,
Hmm.
and I read that there were teams that when they were scouting for potential players that they would be interested in, they would also look into the astrology part of it.
Hmm. Hmm.
So how do you think that big organizations like the NBA franchises, do you think that they pay the attention that you pay?
Yes. I feel some do. Maybe to a different extent, possibly. Maybe they have some sort of algorithm to do a personality test.
Mm-hmm.
Like a generic personality test. Hey, this person is this type of individual. He can match with such and such. Because with astrology, there's a stigma behind it, right? It's sort of
Of course.
like, oh, it's just stars. Who this this people don't believe in that. It's
Mm-hmm.
just that sort of thing. But over the years, for me at least, I've seen it, I've experienced it, I've tested it, where I can pinpoint certain individuals, say in a room, if I know their signs, and sort of predict, hey, just give it a couple weeks, they're gonna get along. And sure enough, it somehow always tends to happen. Like, or even when you play basketball, or even in your case, football or soccer, right?
Yeah.
You kind of need that instant chemistry. Sometimes you naturally vibe with another player naturally. It's like you
Mm-hmm.
get it. You understand them right away. You know how to, where they need the ball, and right away they give you good feedback, and you absorb it well, and then right away you have a good chemistry going. And sometimes they don't believe that it could be related to astrology. As ironic as it sounds, it's there. It's as strange as it sounds. It's really there.
Yeah, I don't think that's because as I told you, we were talking before. As I told you, I'm interested in astrology too, and sometimes a couple of years ago, I had a lot of friends that were skeptic, and they
Uh-huh.
were asking me like, well, what kind of like a planet or a star had to do with anything on your
Mhm.
personality, and but if you look at it, like if you want to take more a scientific approach to it, I would say like like the tides, the oceans, they move because of the moon, right? And the moon is just a small celestial body. So
Mhm.
why cannot bigger planets or the sun, which is a star, of course, influence your personality, for instance?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
So yeah. So yeah. Uh, um. So now tell me about the Grizz. Like the
Grizz.
synergy of the Grizzlies as a team.
Mhm. Uh, the Memphis Grizzlies. I
Memphis
like this
Grizzlies.
team, and I'll tell you why. You know why? Deep down,
Mm,
there's a couple teams in the NBA that I suspect are actually using astrology as far as for selecting their players or the coaching staff. And in my opinion,
mhm.
I feel like Grizzlies is one of them. I truly do.
Okay.
Because if you were to take a step back and look at all of the NBA teams out there, right? And if you were to kind of pinpoint the which team has sort of like the strongest synergy or the most compatible,
Mm-hmm.
Memphis would be in the top 5. And they've been like that for at least ever since Taylor Jenkins has joined that I've observed. So, I think a lot of this is just from my experience, I think or I feel because Taylor Jenkins, first of all, he's a Virgo,
It's a Virgo,
right?
yes.
So Virgos, they tend to see a lot of details that others tend to overlook, but they pay attention to things like astrology very well. Um, and that's a big advantage because Virgos are they're sort of like perfectionists. They're detail oriented. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and they're very adaptable to all sorts of scenarios. So they can adapt easily into an astrology sense and incorporate it into a business sense, in this case, basketball. Another example, the coach in
Mm-hmm.
Denver, Mike Malone,
Mm-hmm.
also a Virgo, right?
Okay.
And that's another team that actually has a very compatible team, right?
You're
And
right.
another general manager that I've actually this is actually how I started kind of seeing things was Daryl Morey,
Mm-hmm.
also a Virgo. And that's part of what he built the team when James Harden was there, who is also a Virgo. He built a team that fit James Harden very, very well. And when I say very, very well, if you have a roster of 12 players,
Mm-hmm.
10 out of those 12 players are compatible to James Harden. It's like he knew, and it's like it was by design because having that many player ratio that are compatible, it's not
Mm-hmm.
easy to do.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I've seen
sure.
the trend of Daryl Morey's player selections that he picks to build around a team, and that's the reason why I feel like he's sort of into that. But another coach I would like to mention real quick, who is an
Mm-hmm.
NBA champion and who's actually coached two legends, Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, and that
Mm-hmm.
is Phil Jackson,
Phil Jackson, he's
also a Virgo.
I didn't
So,
know that.
and quote unquote, they call him the Zen master. So indirectly, I personally feel that, or I suspect that they're actually into that or using some sort of level of astrology into the way they select their players. And granted, they've been very successful at it. And this is what I feel that it's a level that's if it's a secret or not, but I've seen it,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to pave the platform. Hey, it's there, and there's a lot of non-believers out there. Hey, it's a real thing because you just kind of have to understand it to see it. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Um,
mhm.
so yeah, and you mentioned Phil Jackson is a Virgo. Kobe Bryant was a Virgo too. I think I'm
Exactly.
almost sure of
You're
that.
right.
Yeah, yeah,
You're
I'm
right.
right. Yeah.
And
Uh,
Memphis Grizzlies have at
they have
least
yes, the
a lot of
Jaren,
Virgos.
yeah, Brandon Clark, Vince Williams.
You're right.
They have at least no with now Jalen Wells. They have like five Virgos. Yeah.
Yeah, the Williams, Zaire and Vince.
Zaire Williams,
Yep.
Brandon Clark,
Brandon Clark. You're right.
Vince Williams, Zaire
Exactly.
Williams, and now Jalen Wells. Yeah, it's five Virgos out of like 15 or 16 players. Like, it's a third.
Bingo. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why they have the pieces, but I feel like last year was an off year, and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it happens with injuries. And also I've noted that I posted a tweet a while back, and I've read this somewhere where Coach Taylor Jenkins wanted to do an overhaul with his coaching staff, and
Yeah, I saw that tweet from you. Yeah, yeah. Go
mhm,
on. Yeah.
and I observed their signs, and ironically, they were all opposite of him. So as soon as I saw that, I wasn't surprised in his mind because a lot of times when I see these scenarios, I try to picture myself in their shoes. Okay, Taylor Jenkins is a Virgo and he has energies that are opposite of him. It doesn't mean that they don't get along. It's just kind of like they
Hmm.
don't understand each other. That's
Yeah.
all it is, right?
Hmm.
So when you're coaching and you're game planning, I could just envision him being in a game room and game planning, and then you have a Gemini here saying something, trying to go against you, and you have all these other energies trying to basically conflict with what you truly want to do with your own game plan. And I think
Hmm.
I think that's also another part a piece to why they had a down year last year.
Yeah. Okay. 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 So, um, about Greece synergy. Any more things you want to add? Because there's like, okay, I've been watching. I was watching. I knew some of the signs, and also the moon. The rising is more difficult to see.
You're right. You're
Um,
right.
on the players, and like, okay, six. The element is earth. Okay,
Hmm.
five. The element is water, and three. The element is fire, and only one, which is Derrick Rose. We're gonna talk about Derrick Rose
Hmm.
after because you mentioned. Um, what is with all this earth and water energy flowing in Memphis?
Well, well they're dominant in earth and water.
Mm-hmm.
So the best way to look at it to simplify it, and I think I've thought about this for a couple of years to see how what's the most easiest way to explain it. Um, just picture four groups. Elements are the
Okay.
groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so groups, earth and water, they understand each other. That's all it is in an energy sense. It's sort of like they speak the same language, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they speak Spanish, for example, right? Whenever you speak with someone else with the same language that you know that you're familiar, you just understand it. That's all. That's all it is. You just understand it. And that's a big deal. Understanding is the first part to great communication and just understanding, right? And then you have the second group, which is the air and fire, right? They're more dynamic, they're more um, impulsive, and then so they
Mm-hmm.
speak a totally different language, which is, I guess, French. Just put it out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay.
they
Okay.
understand each other's energy in that group. But when you sort of mix one or the other, they try their best to understand each other, but they still are trying. It's a little bit difficult. And I kind of picture it's like in relationships and everything. You know how there's some relationships they try and try and try, but it's just like they just don't get it. but it's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but but it's not because they're not. When I say they're opposite energy, it doesn't mean again that they're gonna hate each other or nothing
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
It's nothing like that. It's just understanding each other. Sometimes they just don't really understand. They want to, but they just
Mm-hmm.
can't. Um, and that's kind of a way that I like to simplify it, right? So whenever you have a group that's dominant on one side, they tend to be a little bit more understanding of each other. But within that group, there's also a different analysis that I look at. So, there's the fixed signs or the mutable signs or the cardinal signs. So I
Uh-huh.
try to balance out all of that and kind of get a dynamic sense of, okay, how, of their overall true synergy. So I look at who's their leaders. So you have Bane, he's a Cancer. Cardinal signs are the initiators, the leaders, the movers. But since he's a
Mm-hmm.
water sign, he's more like the emotional leader, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he may not. I mean, a lot of times fans, when they're observing basketball games, they don't see a lot of the behind the scenes because all they see is just action, right? Just going up and down
Of
the court.
course.
But in the locker room and on the huddle, they're different. I mean, you just kind of have to kind of consider that. So Bane is one of those natural leaders. He's more like the emotional leader. But then they also have a lot of players that are very adaptable, which is a big plus in the NBA world because you need to adapt to a lot of scenarios. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where the Virgos, as you mentioned earlier, come into play because they're mutable signs. And then, a player like Marcus Smart, a Pisces, also
Pisces. Yeah.
immutable. And that's kind of the reason why I feel like they're a very, very strong team, even though their best player, who is
I
a
was going
double
to ask.
Leo,
Yeah. I
Ja
was going to
Morant,
ask it.
he's a fire sign, very confident, that aura of just like, hey, no one can stop me. And that's what brings that him, because another Leo that's a rising star is Anthony Edwards, and you kind of get a
Yeah.
sense of similarities between the two, right?
Mm-hmm. They both
So
speak French, as you were saying.
really? Yeah, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
yeah.
You're right. So that's kind of what I mean. But in this scenario, in this case, that is still a good synergy. Why? Because being a Leo, to get the best version out of the Leo, a team in a basketball sense, a team, if a team feeds around your game, if you're the go-to person, you're the main focus, because Leo's like they're the center stage, they're the main star, right? if you
Yeah.
if you feed them that, they absorb it very well, and they like to shine. They like to uphold their responsibility, in a sense. Think of it as a lion, the king of the jungle, right? Whenever you're the
Mm-hmm.
king of the jungle, you have people around you that look up to you, and because you're the center of attention, and you have to uphold your stardom, in a sense, right? So that's the
Uh-huh.
reason why it works well in this scenario, because his influence and his role on the team is just that, a Leo being the star player, and he fits with a lot of energies that, one, have adaptability in them, and it fits the structure of the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to ask you, because I was watching all these earth and water signs, and then the Leo with the double Leo, and I was going to ask you, but you already answered, and it is, yeah, you just
Hmm.
it was like a perfect answer. Uh, and Jaren is a Virgo, and from what I saw, his moon in Scorpio.
Yes, yes.
So, want to
So he's
elaborate on that?
so he's a complementary player, right? So, in a
Mm-hmm.
sense, whenever fans observe a team and certain players where they expect them to, yeah, they are stars. And I know a player like James Harden, for example,
Mm-hmm.
he gets criticized a like, oh, he's not a natural leader. Oh, well, because that's not really his energy. If they understand
Yeah.
him better, he's a great player, but
Mm-hmm.
him with his energy type fits better when he's adapting to players around him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he's an engine and everything, but back to Jaren Jackson. So he holds his position. He's a center or power forward. So
Mm-hmm.
his type is more helping. That's a key word, helping. And if he was to ask to lead the team, like be the, hey, you're the go-to guy, it's going to be a little bit complex, not a little bit hard, because he's not naturally that type. He needs an energy to feed off from, like Desmond Bain, because Bain can lead. If you ask Bain, hey, we need you to lead, he will do it because it's naturally his energy. And Jaron Jackson has the capacity to adapt to him, to
Yeah.
adapt to John Morant, to adapt to Marcus Smart. And Virgos in general are also, they make good teammates because they can follow. Okay. And that's not a
Mm-hmm.
bad thing, because you know how they have like, oh, I'm the leader, but they also have follows, because in an NBA sense, you need that quote unquote follower. You don't want an NBA player that's just stubborn. "No, I don't want to follow you." You don't like that. I mean,
Like,
because you
yeah, of
need
course.
players, you need players when they say, "Hey, I need you to do this," you need them to say, "Okay, I'll do it," and go all out. That's what you need. And Memphis has a lot of those type of players, including Jaren Jackson. He holds a defensive end, defensive anchor. He's a great shot blocker. So he sort of provides that presence of adaptability and helping his teammates around him. He's a team player, and that's a
Mm-hmm.
good way to put it.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you. And since
Mhm,
now you talked about Marcus Smart, he's a Pisces, and
mhm,
from what I know and from what I've been what I read also, of course, um, Pisces tend to be like the glue in a team.
mhm,
Do
mhm.
you agree with this?
Yes.
What kind of influence do you see a player like Marcus Smart? He's a
Mhm.
Pisces. I think his moon is in Taurus. I looked it over. I'm not sure, but yeah, he definitely is a
Uh,
Pisces. What kind of
yeah,
role do you see on him?
he's a I wanna say he's Capricorn moon, and, you might be right, I think
Mm,
he is Taurus. Well, he's a p the thing with Pisces, they're an emotional sign, it's a water sign, so they adapt to energies around them. So Pisces is the 12th sign of the zodiac, so they're sort of like the empathic energy where they kind of feel everyone's energies around them. If they can sort of like sense that, hey, if you're sad, they're gonna, go make you feel happy. That they adapt to people's energies around them. And for someone that's sort of being disrespectful, hey, they're gonna be disrespectful back. They adapt, in other words, adapt, right?
mhm,
So
mhm.
in a team sense, that is very useful because he's sort of like he feeds off of other people's energy and he sort of brings them together. It's like that togetherness, that wholesomeness, right? He's a type of player, and he's a type of player that would back you up and kind of help you in emotional sense. And that's the reason why a Pisces and a Cancer would work well with Desmond Bain. Desmond Bain's key to this team, by the way. 'Cause I'll mention him a lot
Okay.
because he's an important player for this team because of his
Mhm.
sign. But yeah, Marcus Smart feeds off of Desmond Bain, and
Yeah.
also, he has that leader in him. With I want to say he is a Capricorn um, moon, but with the Capricorn
Mm,
moon, let me just
mhm.
make sure.
No, no, maybe.
Yeah,
I
yeah, he
just
is he is a Capricorn moon. So with the
okay, okay.
Capricorn moon, it's a
Uh-huh.
cardinal sign, so they're leaders, right? So they are authoritative leaders. What that means is that they lead, they're results oriented. So he brings that presence, one, to bring that structure of, hey, if we need this done, we need it done, goals and everything else, because that's a Capricorn mentality. Another Capricorn that's very famous, LeBron James. They're
LeBron
just
James.
they're just results, 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 and if they don't get it, hey, just look out. They'll throw a fit, and they tend to be dubbed as the pessimistic sign, but mainly
Mhm.
because they want to succeed so bad that if they fail, they flip the switch and they get in a bad mood.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, that's kind of what he is.
yeah, I saw that. I saw that. I remember a game this season against the Wolves, and the Grizzlies were really playing bad and not putting an effort. And he gave a rant like, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. I saw that. Everyone that was watching on Twitter could see that. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I want to address some more questions about the Greece, but
Sure, sure.
there's something that I want you to develop a little bit more. You already did, but you stressed that is a leader, and it comes out for everyone that's watching the game and watching how Desmond Bain developed his game, and it kind of stands out that he is a leader. uh, is that because he's a Cancer? And also,
Yes.
I'm not sure because now I'm not going to say where his moon is because I just messed up with Marcus Smart.
Oh, no, no,
I do
yeah.
think that his moon also is in Cancer, but I'm not sure. No,
You're
I'm
right,
not
you're right,
sure.
yeah.
But
Yeah, you're right.
so
Yeah,
you
so
said, and go ahead. You said like he's the emotional leader of the team.
yeah, so he's a double cardinal energy. So he's sort of like the emotional leader of the team. So the thing, like you mentioned earlier, with rising signs, we don't know what the rising sign plays a factor because it's sort of like your outer personality, right? But I look
Mm-hmm.
more into like their core personality and their inner personality, which is the sun and the moon. Like, um, so he might have sort of like that silent type of person. I mean, at least from me, that from my observation, because I don't watch enough Grizzlies game, to be honest.
Yep.
But whenever I do watch it, I see him more like the quiet leader type.
Yeah, he
Like
is.
he's very quiet, but sort of similar to Kawhi Leonard, because Kawhi Leonard is a
Mm-hmm.
Cancer with an Aquarius moon, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he probably has a rising that sort of stems from that quiet type. But deep down, when players are in the locker room and players in the huddle, Desmond Bain is sort of like that leader in an emotional sense where people feed off of his energy. Cancers are very strong. teammates because they're the one that holds everyone accountable and that brings that foundation of hey, togetherness, right? A
Mm-hmm.
very more outspoken double Cancer also Patrick
Mm-hmm.
Beverly. Now, I assume he has more. I'm assuming he has a rising that's like a fire. That's just
Yeah, yeah,
my
for sure.
opinion.
Yeah, yeah, I would think so too.
But he stands out because he's out there, but they are the same energy type, and you can
Yeah,
sense Patrick Beverly, that leader, that emotional leader,
yeah,
that's what Desmond Bain brings. And the reason why he's important because he's really out of all the pieces that's core and that's important, he's the only one that's a cardinal sign in this team. So he's a very valuable piece to this team.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Um, something that you mentioned on a tweet that I focus that I saw, uh, and I saw it a couple of months ago.
Mhm.
Um, when Derrick Rose came to Memphis, there was this thing that was kind of going to mentor Ja. Um, being Ja a W, as you said,
Yeah.
and being Derrick Rose a Libra with
Yeah.
a Leo sign, I believe.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Mhm.
how do you think this works?
Well, when I saw them sign Derrick Rose, the first thing that came into my mind was, hey, I think the upper management from the Memphis Grizzlies were looking for a player to sort of guide John Morant, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was a perfect match. So I really don't know how they did their analysis to get a player like Derrick Rose.
Mm-hmm.
But whoever it is, and this is another reason why I feel like they are into astrology because he's the perfect match for John Morant to guide. Like, there's someone in the Grizzlies organization, and I wouldn't be surprised if there is, that's doing all it. Because to me, I see it clear as day because I'm familiar with a lot of these signs. Um, Derrick Rose and John Morant feeds off of each other's energy very well. John Morant, double Leo, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that could kind of fall out of his zone is the confidence part. Like if he gets too overly confident, he gets hey, oh, he's too arrogant or he's too
Mm-hmm.
this, and then so
Too much W. Yeah.
he sort of needs someone to kind of, hey, stop being like that. But he needs an energy that he can absorb critique well. Okay, remember the
Okay.
speaking the
Okay.
same language,
Yeah, I was
and that
thinking about
ener
that. It needs to be
bingo,
spoken in French. Right.
exactly, and that energy is a Libra. Now, John Morant is an fire element, right? Think of fire. What happens when you blow air? It ignites it even more. But the thing with the Libra, they're a scale, so they know how to balance things
Mm-hmm.
in general. So he has, and in him being a cardinal energy, he has that capacity to do that with John Morant, and John Morant will absorb his critique or his guidance or anything that he says very well to a point where it's not disrespectful. Well, he'll just understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a perfect signing because from last year he was having issues, with the outs off the
Yeah,
court,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and I think this was a great thing for him because, in truthfully, he didn't. There's no with before Derrick Rose got there. There was really no other energies to do that for John Morant. So it's sort of like John Morant was on the loose.
Uh-huh.
So great signing for them. But, I think from my understanding, I think he's retiring. Is that true? I don't know. I might
I
have
know, I
missed
know.
that.
I think yes, it's gonna stay at least another year.
Okay, 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 yeah.
So
But
I
it's a
think
great
so.
great, match for him to keep him at bay, keep him
Yeah,
honest.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Also, how
Yeah.
does GG work with Jab? GG being a Sagittarius.
Yes. I'm curious about that one, and I would love to see them play because 'cause I'm excited. I li
Mm-hmm.
that's a really good connection between the 2, on playing on the court. John Morant, Leo, fire sign, G Jackson, Sagittarius, fire sign, they feed off of each other very well. a duo that I can compare him to back then was Gary Payton and Sean Kemp from the Seattle SuperSonics. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you watched basketball back then, but I would envision their synergy to be something similar to that. They will quickly, just instantly get it. They will, just on the court, you can just get a sense that there's a fluidity there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the key thing is another aspect I look at whenever I'm analyzing is how the rotational synergy is. Like who's their
Okay.
incoming player from the bench, what position they're gonna fill in, and so forth, right? So ideally, as much as possible, at least it doesn't always have to be like this because every team is unique. Some teams have more talent than others, but as much as possible, you would like to have as much energies compatible on the floor at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's just one theory, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I would think it would be ideal for someone like Gigi Jackson to come off the bench, to kind of transition in a rotational sense to kind of balance out their synergy to keep it afloat. Um,
Uh-huh.
but it could work. It could work very well. I can also use them together. If they use them together, then I would anticipate the influence to be focused towards them. And when I say influence, it's like they're if they're the go-to person, just those two, and then if Taylor Jenkins says, "Hey, we need them two to get the ball," that's a better scenario because there's a lot of teams that sort of does that balance attack as well. But if they're centered, if their energies are offsetting, then that balance attack doesn't really work well, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so something like that could work too. So Gigi Jackson, his best synergy would be a player like John Morant, and that would be the same thing for John Morant as well.
Okay. How about the drafts? Okay, so we draft ED, Zach
Mhm.
ED. He's a Taurus. How is going to fit in?
Well, Zach Edey, a Taurus with a Gemini moon. So the
Yeah.
thing with Taurus, they're a fixed sign, right? So think of it as a
Yeah.
constant energy. They're immovable, means they're hard to move. What meaning also is that once they make up their decision, it's hard to change their mind, right?
Yes, stubborn.
Um, very, very stubborn, but that's a good thing in a basketball sense. You can because you get dependability. You get,
Mm-hmm.
he's gonna be there and you're gonna count on him. He's gonna be consistent, he's gonna be loyal. You're gonna get that sort of energy from him. And you need that. You need to build a structure like that. Like Taurus or any fixed sign, they make good foundational pieces, mainly because they help build consistency and structure to any organization. And him being a rookie, I know he's only a rookie, but give him a
Mm-hmm.
couple more years. He's going to be the player that you can just count on. No one will really talk about him because Taurus are not really flashy.
Mm-hmm.
They're constant. They just do their job. He'll get maybe whatever many points and it's 12 rebound, whatever, and no one will talk about it. But he's going to be there each and every year. Like that's the type of player most Tauruses are. Like Chris Paul is like that. I mean, he's consistent even though he's past his prime, but
Mm-hmm.
PJ Tucker, like you just get that sense of dependability, and that's kind of what Zach Edey will bring into the picture. With him and Gemini Moon, he will be a little bit more outspoken. Um, he'll say things straight out without thinking. That type
Uh-huh.
of. But by the end of the day, he's still a Taurus.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Also, we draft Jalen Wells, which is a Virgo, and okay, we talked a lot
Oh,
about
Virgo. See,
Virgos. Yeah.
this is why I think they know something because Virgos. This team is filled with Virgos.
Yeah, it is. It's five. I count and it's five,
Mhm.
and like 15 is the third. It's 33%.
Mhm.
Um, and also Cam Spencer. Cam Spencer is an Aries, and I noticed there's only two Aries in Grizzlies. Cam Spencer and John Concher. How do
Yes.
Aries fit in here?
Well, Aries are more like the spark plug, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
um, if you need a shift in a game tone, meaning if the Grizzly starters they just go down by 20 points, and you just need something to spark. His energy is a perfect energy to bring in because he will do just that. Him being a cardinal energy, but since he's a fire element, he's more of a leader of energy. Whereas,
Mm-hmm.
when Bane, him being a Cancer Cardinal, he's a leader of emotion. Well, Aries is leader of energy. Aries in general are more like the go go go. Like they're the one that's they talk fast, they do things fast, they want to be the first one, and they just get it done. That's the energy type. So he could fit in mainly because his energy is sort of isolated, and they can use him, and his position and his influence is also just right, meaning that he's not a big influence. He's not like their top two player, but he's a good rotational piece that you can utilize in
Mm-hmm.
situations. He's a good rotational piece that you can utilize to just put in some minutes here and there. So he'll fit in just fine. I don't think it's going to be anything major to throw off the team, because my anticipation of him, especially being a rookie, it's not going to be a big influence. I don't see him being
Yeah.
a top two player with the Grizzlies or anything like that. But so I think he'll fit in just fine because of that.
Okay.
Similar
Yeah.
to the guy from Denver, I can't remember. He
So,
comes off the bench. Ricky Raj, I can't remember his name. Oh my god. Um, but they have an Aries also, from
yeah,
Denver
yeah, I
Nuggets.
know. Yeah, yeah,
Braun,
I know.
Braun, I think his name.
Yeah, yeah,
No, no,
Brown. Yeah.
Braun,
No, he's the guy that won the dunk contest, right?
Braun. No, I can't remember. Yeah, so
Uh,
he's basically similar to him because Braun, he's sort of that Aries energy filled with a lot of earth signs, similar to the setup of the Grizzlies. And but then yet he fits in just fine because he's not like a big piece. He's sort of like a bench
the
player,
spark.
a spark plug, and that's fine. And that's a good shift in energy. That's a good player to put in and just get something going. So yeah, it's a good fit.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And now I want to ask you a question as a GM, and you are the Zodiac GM. So,
Hmm.
if Grizzlies were looking for a center, and I'm gonna give you three names. Okay.
Okay.
Uh, Gogo Bitadze is a Cancer. Clint Capella is a Taurus, and Daniel Theiss is an Aries. As a Zodiac GM, who would you choose?
Uh, I think Bitadze got signed with Orlando. If he was
Mm-hmm.
available, I would
Mm-hmm.
go after him first. If he was available.
Okay.
Um uh Capella. I like Capella. But of course, if you're considering like the finance and all that stuff, Capella or without that, Capella would be a good fit.
No,
Capella because he's
I'm not considering the finance. I'm just
okay,
considering
okay. The
the
synergy.
astrological. Yeah.
Okay, okay, I see what you're saying. Okay. So Bitadze A plus, um Capella would be with his current team A plus. Thice would be with his influence, with his position and role, coming off the bench, situational. I would give it a B minus on
Okay.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we would go for Bitadze if it wasn't Orlando or Capella. If you were the GM.
Hmm.
Now, it's another question I want to ask you. I saw on your Twitter that uh Trey Young would be like the perfect fit for the Grizz,
Yeah.
and Jamorant would be like the perfect fit for the Hawks. Uh,
Yes.
okay, a disclaimer: I don't want
Yeah. Yeah. Of
the trade
course. Of
to
course.
happen, but
Yeah.
the question I want to ask you: how would the Grizz team look if Jamorant was not had not been drafted? Trey Young had been drafted before then. Therefore, Jamorant had not been drafted. How would you
So
see this team work with Trey Young and not Jamorant on the team?
I personally feel Trey Young would be looked at differently. Um, I would feel that that Trey Young, because a lot of Trey Young gets a lot of they're saying that he's not capable of leading a team and such because he doesn't fit that line of Hawks. But with the Grizzlies, his perception will change it. Of him. I think he fits very well. He'll be more of a player that a top tier. He's already
Mm-hmm.
is, but he's more like an even top tier level of point guard, similar to where Doncic is, similar to what Curry is, in my opinion, because he's a
Mm-hmm.
great player. But with all the energies that fits him so well, and the coach that fits him so well in the Grizzlies staff, oh my
Mm-hmm.
god, I feel like Trey Young would flourish with this team, you know,
And
because
mm-hmm.
if you take a step back, with couple years ago, and I'm sure you probably noticed it because I've noticed it only right with John Morant when he was either injured or out for a certain amount of
Mm-hmm.
time. It
Mm-hmm.
was a couple years ago. They had I can't remember his name. He was a backup point guard.
Tyus Jones.
Tyus Jones. Okay. Notice whenever Morant was out, they would start Tyus Jones. Well, guess what?
Mm-hmm.
They would still win, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the media would say, "Hey, do the Memphis Grizzlies need John Morant? Why are they still winning?" And they put up a stat where they had, like a high winning percentage without John Morant. Well, because the fitting of the way their team is structured, the synergy actually quote unquote improved with
Mm-hmm.
Tyus Jones because he mixed very well. He understood everyone else on that team, his energy. And of course, talent goes down. Granted, John Morant's very talented.
Of
But
course.
with if you flip that with Trey Young, just imagine already with his talent, almost similar to John Morant, the Grizzlies are going to be even better. So that's just the way I observe it. That's the way I see it. So yeah, I personally feel if that trade or if it was a switch or even if Trae Young was drafted earlier, yeah, I definitely see Trae Young's perspective will be very, very different from what the NBA world looks at him today.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Because okay, I don't want to make this trade. I'm just yeah, I don't want to. But
Hmm.
I found it very curious, and I want to ask you about this because I found it, and also Trey Young is a Virgo, so
Yes.
yeah, so yeah, I found it very curious, and I wanted to make this question to you. Okay, so but still, we're keeping Jamara in Memphis. Okay.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. He means a lot to Memphis, and that's, I mean, for everything else that goes on, even with finance, even with everything else, the marketability. John Moran is very important to the Memphis Grizzlies. Yeah, he's definitely a keeper.
Okay. Now, on a broader sense, I want to ask you about, especially about the Western Conference. Uh, who are the teams? Which are the teams that have the greatest synergy, the best synergy?
Ah. Based on some of the recent moves with the free agency and all that, Denver sort of stayed afloat, so they still consistent. So I still see Denver up there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Pelicans with Murray
Murray.
joining that team. Now they have four of their top core players that are all compatible. That's a team
Mm-hmm.
to keep an eye out for. But I feel like their head coach is opposite of him. So this could be a wild card, meaning that hey, it could work very, very well, or it could be a point where he might be in the hot seat.
He's a Leo, right?
He's a
I
Leo,
think.
yeah. So I'm gonna keep an eye on that because that could be something that could come maybe later on in the season or something. But granted, they can still do very, very good. They have the synergy for that. Um, oh, try. Oh, of course, Thunder. Wow, I missed that one.
I
Thunder,
I didn't want to
Thunder.
ask you. I was going to ask you. Okay.
Yes, with the sign with they got a Caruso, him being a Pisces. Their head coach is a Pisces.
They got Hartenstein being a Taurus also.
Yes, Hartenstein being wow. Yes, OKC is a team. Wow, last year I think they kind of surprised the NBA, like they
Mm-hmm.
were just this young team out of nowhere. But I'm curious to see how it's gonna pan out this season. I can envision them being one of those teams that's gonna be just sort of like the Boston Celtics, basically winning a lot of games. Like a team that's going to be hard to be considering if they're all healthy, because they have a Taurus. as their but two Taurus, put it that way, at their front court. They got Hartenstein and Shed Holmgren. You're gonna get the
Yeah, yeah.
dependability. You're gonna get the, stability on that position. And then SGA, do his thing. He's a star player. He leads a team. He's a Cancer, the emotional leader,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Caruso being a Pisces, being able to adapt. So they have the right pieces. They have Jalen Williams. He's an Aries. He's that spark plug if they need to shift
Mm-hmm.
his energy. But the good thing, it's just him, right? But he's surrounded with a lot of energies that are heavy. So it fits very well, similar to how John Morant's sort of like that isolated energy, but fits very well around him. So
Mm-hmm.
they're another team to keep an eye out for. So Spurs are low key sneaky only because they haven't had a. They got Chris Paul, but they
Yeah.
haven't established anything yet. But they have the synergy to do it. So that's another team that's sort of like I see them more like an under the radar that can surprise the league next season.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I think the rest is sort of like neutral right
What do you
offhand.
think about your Houston Rockets synergy?
Rockets, the thing with the Rockets, if I was to pinpoint one team that's probably the most stubborn team, it would be the Houston Rockets.
What you mean?
Because their energies displays just that. If you were to take out their whole roster, they're nothing but fixed signs, right? Now, the good thing about fixed signs is they will get the job done to completion because with any fixed signs, yes, they're constant, they're consistent, but they always complete the task. But if you have too many of them, there may be a point where, especially with the head coach who's a Leo, a fixed
Yeah.
sign, if he
Mm-hmm.
wants to implement a certain game plan or if he wants to adapt or change something here and there, good luck because you're going to have a lot of players like, I don't want to move to the bench. I don't want to do this. They probably won't say it, but their energy is going to kind of bring that out of them. I mean, naturally. And the Houston Rockets have a lot of that. Rockets, I see them as a very talented team, but the way their synergy is, it's kind of hard to see them break out of it. They would have to make some big changes, in my opinion. This is only my opinion
Mm-hmm.
to kind of break out of that mediocrity because they're strong. In other words, for example, Jalen Green, Sengun are their key players from what I see, but they're opposite from majority of the rest of the players, and that's
Jalen Green
hard.
is an Aquarius.
Aquarius, who is a
And
fixed sign,
Sengun is a Leo.
a Leo, a fixed
Yeah.
sign. You see that's
Leo.
so many
Yeah.
fixed signs.
Uh-huh.
um, but yeah, that's one team that's kind of it's still I don't consider them synergy wise to kind of break out of them. I think, but Udoka, he's a good coach, and
Yeah, yeah.
they're gonna be just continuing what they're doing. Yeah,
How did you see the maps?
the
Um,
Mavs. Okay.
yeah, they have Doncic is a Pisces, uh,
Yes.
Kyrie's an Aries. Now they have Clay Thompson, which is Aquarius with a
Mm-hmm.
Leo
Mm-hmm.
moon, I believe. How do you
Yes.
see
Yeah.
this? How do you
If
see the
if
maps?
anything, I'm they're more like I like to call them a wild card as well because I see a conflict between their two superstars, right? But the
Mm-hmm.
reason why they made it work last year because yes, they are very dominant. But I give a lot of credit to Jason Kidd because he was able to kind of find a way to optimize their two superstars. When I observed the game in the playoffs, Kyrie and Luca, they don't have the best synergy, but they play a lot of ISO ball. They're two of the
Uh-huh.
best isolated players in the league, right? If you can do that, that's fine, right? Um, and the role there, the role that Jason Kidd utilizes both of them, I think it fit that way because they were elite ISO players, right? But in a
Mm-hmm.
synergy sense, in where you want everyone else to kind of, there could be a conflict because one, Luca is really good at getting everyone involved. Kyrie, his energy type, him being an Aries Scorpio, the team around him sort of has to adapt to him because he's the leader, right?
Mm-hmm.
So But the balance, as long as the balance is still there, and with Clay in the mix, which he benefits from Kyrie, they're a wild card, meaning that they could be very, very good, streaky. In other words, streaky, very,
Mm-hmm.
very good, or they can maybe fall into times where they could be very, very bad because they're just gonna try to find. If they get lost in that mix of fluidity of balance, they could just kind of falter, you know. But as long as they maintain that balance, and with Clay in the mix, because him having that Leo, he kind of needs the ball too, you know.
Yeah.
You know, they're I call them a wild card. They made it all
Well,
the way to the finals, and they have two very talented players. So all of those are pluses. So they do have a lot of positives on their side going for them.
okay. Two more questions I want to ask you. Of
Mhm,
course, the Boston Celtics, the synergy, and one thing that I was talking with a friend of mine the other day. I get the sense that the leader on that team is Jalen Brown. He's a Scorpio, I think.
mhm, mhm.
Would you agree with this?
Well, out of the way their team structure and then the way their influence is, Jalen Brown is one of the leaders. So
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Brown's a Scorpio with an Aries moon. So Aries moon is a cardinal energy, which is a good leader sign of energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so he brings that. He sort of kind of feeds that type of mentality because it's filtered through his Scorpio, right? So, but the neat thing about that, and it's interesting you mentioned that he's more of a, because when we think of the Celtics, we think of Jason Tatum, right?
As a
And
Pisces.
Jalen Brown because they're
Uh-huh.
two of their best players. But
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting that a lot of people tend to lean more towards Jalen Brown as being the quote unquote leader because he has that Aries moon in him. And Jason Tatum, he is a Pisces with a Taurus moon. So
Okay.
his energy type is more about consistency, more about adaptability, fluidity, blending in with the team. And he doesn't really get dubbed as that leader, right? I mean, at least
Mm-hmm.
from my perception. But it's okay, and people have to kinda understand it because it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that because he's a great player. Just because he's the best player, sometimes he may not be the leader because his energies doesn't have that in him, but as far as for and this is all an energy sense, right? So
Of
with
course.
Jalen Brown, yeah, definitely, I definitely can see that. But Derek White is also one of their emotional leaders, so that fits well. That three player right there fits very well connection because
Derek White
one
is which
Cancer,
Cancer? Okay.
yeah, he's a Derek White is a Cancer, Cancer with a Taurus moon, so.
Okay.
So yeah, so those three, I think is what's the core strength of their team.
And
Meaning
they
that hey, those three they're strong together.
and they three are water signs, so
All
all
water
speak
signs.
they all speak French.
Exactly, exactly.
Exactly.
And they understand their head coach very well, who is a Cancer Capricorn, who is a natural leader because both of those signs are cardinal signs. So their structure, the way they're
Mm-hmm.
influenced, the way their roles of their best players fits them
Mm-hmm.
so well. And I've read somewhere where I think before the finals or during the finals, Missoula and Tatum went to a film room and watched a movie about, I don't know, but I can't remember what it was about championships or something like that to help motivate him. And to
Mm-hmm.
me, when I saw that, I'm like, that's what I mean synergy. It's when two energies understand each other, they connect to another level of like, hey, this is gonna bring the best out of me. Kind of like that. It was like more like a motivational thing that he did. And it's little things like that that will give an edge, over other teams, barring
Yeah.
their talent tier and everything else, experience and all that. You always have to put everything else. But yeah, this little
Yeah.
analysis, I always feel it's like that's like an advantage in a sense.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Um. One last question I want to ask you.
Mhm,
If you have two teams playing, okay, against each other,
mhm,
and let's say one is B in talents
mhm,
and A in synergy, and the other one is the opposite, is A in talents and B in synergy. Which one
Mhm.
would you take?
Mm. If it was an NBA,
Hmm.
the reason why I
And then
mentioned that it's key because the standard deviation of talent is elite. It's like expected baseline, right? I still would take talent, of course. Talent, you can't go away
mhm,
with talent. Talent is talent, right? Because also depends on the variance of the talent of the B team, you know.
mhm.
But usually those type of games, from what I've seen, they tend to be close too. Where I've seen games where their superstars are either injured and then they're sort of just play a lot of like role players, and then this other team would be like a team like I don't know, like Boston. I can't remember. Boston played actually that happened this season. I can't think of the team that they played against. I think it was the Grizzlies. Yeah,
Mm,
Grizzlies had a bunch of injuries. All their stars are
yeah, yeah.
gone. You know,
When they play, yeah, yeah. When they play
was
in
it
Boston, yeah,
Boston?
yeah.
And then they ended up beating Boston. I remember I tweeted about that. And
No, it was
and
not. No, we didn't
was it
beat Boston.
Boston? Or who did they
No, no,
beat?
yeah, yeah, I know where you're getting because I
I
want to
can't
ask. Is it because I noticed you tweeted that it
I
was the
can't remember
Bucks.
who. Bucks. There you go. Yes.
We beat them
And
twice. Yeah.
exactly. And then they had like I remember when I before the game started, I looked at their starter real quick when they announced it. I'm like, wow. Like they don't have all their star players are gone, but they're very compatible. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, you know what? They have a shot of beating the Bucks. The Bucks didn't have the best synergy. They had talent, Lillard and Giannis,
Mm-hmm.
and sure enough, they ended up beating them. But in a 7 game series, of course, I'll still take
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Bucks.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Mhm,
it's funny that you mentioned it because this question it came up just because I saw that tweet
uh-huh.
that you posted and I found it like and then I remembered that we beat them twice and
Mm,
yeah and of course on the 7 game would be different but yeah
yeah.
synergy was on our side and talent was more on Buck's side of course.
Yeah, because in the game of basketball, teams adjust and adapt. And that's the reason why I feel like mutable signs are important for a team. That's the reason why I see, a team like Denver does well, and Memphis
Hmm.
has it too. They have it. So we'll see. We'll see.
Okay, so I'm out of questions. Well, we could go on and talk about this for hours,
Oh
but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
for sure. It was definitely a pleasure to have you here. Um, I want to say that I'm honored, and I want to thank you for joining us.
Mhm.
Um, and I want to say that keep up the good work because you're uh, like one of the most interesting accounts I found on Twitter, like on last year. So
I
keep
appreciate
it
it.
up.
Yeah. I truly appreciate it, and thank you for having me. And as always, I always show my love back because it's something that the support and everything that with the content. Because initially, my first I think 3 months, I would get a lot of people just saying negative stuff, about astrology and all that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah,
sort of
yeah,
I sort of want to keep it going to kind of like let's see them a different side of analytics. And once it started coming out more and more, and I think that's kind of where it established its consistency from there. But yeah, but as
yeah.
always, I appreciate you for having me. It's a pleasure.
No, it's an honor, and keep it up because yeah, people
Mhm.
may doubt it, but you have a point there, and
Yeah,
with time, people will get your point. They are already getting it, and yeah, you
yeah,
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 you really found something there.
yeah. Thank you
Okay,
so much. Thank you
well,
so
thank
much.
you so much, and hopefully someday you'll be back. I
Yeah,
hope
yeah, for
so.
sure. Yeah, just let me know. Yeah, I'm open like that. Just let me know. If you want to do another podcast or anything like that. I'm
I
okay
sure
with that.
want. Like
Yeah.
in the beginning of the season, I sure want, and I'll sure reach out for you, and we'll talk about
Hmm.
more basketball and synergy and all the stuff we've
Yeah.
been talking about tonight. Okay, so thank
Okay.
you very much. Thank you everyone that was listening to episode 9 with of Grizzlies Worldwide podcast. The first time we had a non-Grizzlies fan here, and it was awesome. Bye, you all.
Hmm. All right.